before the president has even named a nominee for the Supreme Court, the Republicans are doing what everyone thought was impossible. Is it real? The former chair of the Judiciary Committee, the senior senator from Utah, said today, we're not going to hold hearings. Wouldn't matter because we're not going to prove whoever he sends. And I thought it was just a senator talking. But now we've learned that Senator McConnell has even upped that one. He's gotten every Republican member of the Judiciary Committee to say they won't even hold a hearing. Hard to comprehend, but it appears that Senator Grassley is going to follow through on this plan. You go down in history as the most obstructionist judiciary chair in the history of our country. Now that says a lot, because we knew about the Judiciary Committee chairs during the Civil Rights era. I can't imagine Senator Grassley, who I've served with in Congress for more than 3 decades. Is this a legacy that he wants? Is this a choice he's making by following Senator McConnell down this path of Trump and Cruz? The Republican leader once believed that the Senate should do its job on Supreme Court nominations. We got 4 pages of quotes that he has made saying basically the same thing. Supreme Court's not a time for being obstructive. It's time to have hearings and move forward. 4 pages. Anybody wants them, we'll be happy to give them to you. Before Ted Cruz and Donald Trump took over the Republican Party, and now the Judiciary Committee itself, the committee chair, Senator Grassley, said, quote, I've always been of the opinion that the Senate needs to conduct a comprehensive and careful review of Supreme Court nominations. It's important that the nominee be given a fair, respectful, and also a deliberative process. Close quote. And now here's the chair of this committee, this very important committee, saying we're not even going to hold a hearing. And I heard at the just a few minutes ago, Senator McConnell said he was inclined not to even meet with the nominee. So instead of the Judiciary Committee doing the Judiciary Committee's job, providing a fair, deliberative process, Republicans are ruling it out even before the nominee is named. They're threatening to abandon the Senate's responsibilities. It's what Donald Trump and Ted Cruz want. Remember, Trump said, delay the Supreme Court nominee. So they're doing that in a way that I'm sure Trump couldn't imagine. They've taken that to a new height. It's wrong, and the American people, I really believe, won't stand for this. The Senate needs to do its job. As a Republican leader once said, quote, it's time to move away from the advise and obstruct and get back to advise and consent. He said it. That's what he said. Republicans must take their duty seriously and reject the extreme approach of Trump and Cruz. The Senate, the world's greatest deliberative body, they're not going to deliberate at all on this most important responsibility they have. All we want them to do is to do their job. Do their job. Senator Durbin, with your new voice.
I've been listening carefully to Senator McConnell. I'm trying to find some basis for agreement. And it turns out the principle that he stated is something I'm interested in. Here's what he said. If you're going to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court, let the American people decide who will fill it. So I checked. They did. In 2012, the American people decided by a margin of 5 million votes that Barack Obama would be president of the United States, not just for 3 years or 3 years and 3 months, but for 4 years. So if Senator McConnell is looking for some indication from the body politic from America, they voted, and they voted decisively on behalf of President Obama. What's at stake here gets to the heart of what we swear to uphold and defend, this Constitution. This Constitution is very explicit. Article 2, Section 2. The President shall appoint a nominee to fill the vacancy. Shall appoint. And the Senate shall, by advice and consent, approve that nominee or vote on that nominee. Both of those are directions. They give a responsibility to the President to appoint a nominee, to name a nominee, and they give the responsibility to the Senate to advise and consent. Now, what do you hear from the Republicans today? People who get before us and argue when the Supreme Court nominees are up. We're strict constructionists. We believe in the Constitution. We're going to stick by every word. So what happened today in this press conference? In this press conference, Senator McConnell and the Republican leaders said point blank they are not going to exercise their constitutional responsibilities. This has never happened before. Never. We've not had this happen in history. And now Senator McConnell is going to have to wear the collar for it. He has decided that his Republicans will not do their job. Our message to them is very, very clear. 3 words: do your job. Call this nominee once the President presents this nominee, review their background, have a hearing, ask your questions, and then bring the nominee for a vote. That ought to be the standard. The Constitution requires it. And for Senator McConnell and the Senate Republicans to walk away from this and to buy into the Trump strategy of delay, delay, delay is a further indication of the obstruction that we have faced in this chamber since the Republicans have been in control. This is the worst example.
Well, right now we're in the grips of a new level of obstruction by the Senate Republicans. It's a sad day when the world's greatest deliberative body won't even deliberate. Our message today to our Republican colleagues is simple: do your job. The Republicans running for president and here in the Senate profess their love and admiration for the Constitution to anyone who will listen. But it's clear the Republicans only love the Constitution when it's convenient for them and fits their political goals. The Constitution, as Dick outlined, the Constitution very clearly lays out the job the Senate has to do when it comes to filling a Supreme Court vacancy. Republicans have a right to vote no on whomever the President nominates, but to not even give the nominee a hearing and fair consideration is beyond the pale, and it won't stand. The Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee said this afternoon that their, quote, consensus view, unquote, is to deny the nominee hearings. That may be their consensus view or the consensus between the far right and the far right, but that is certainly not the consensus view of the American people who want the Senate to act. Both sides over the last week have been tossing old quotes about judges and the Supreme Court back and forth. This Republican said that 15 years ago. That Democrat said this 20 years ago. But here's the point. Not one of those quotes affected an actual vacancy or an actual nominee. Not one of the quotes changes the fact that we have a vacancy on the court now, right in front of us, that must be filled. We have a job to do. The Senate must do its job. Now, this harkens back to 2013, same scenario. The hard right, led by Ted Cruz, said shut down the government unless ACA is repealed. The Republican leadership knew it was a loser, but they had to go along because the hard right has such power. Same thing is happening today. My guess, Senator McConnell, who has tried for a year to build this idea that the Senate's working and Republicans are not obstructionists, knows this is the wrong thing to do, but he can't resist the clarion call of the hard right. And like in 2013, they will have to back off their position with their tail between their legs. Today's effort by Senator McConnell to get every member of the Judiciary Committee to sign a letter saying they won't do hearings is an effort to make this issue go away. It won't. The American people won't let it. We won't let it, because we know that the American people sent us here to do a job, plain and simple. It's time for Senate Republicans to do their job.
Senator Murray.
Well, you know, for Republican leaders, this is a pretty simple choice. Stand with the Constitution and the vast majority of people across the country who want a functioning Supreme Court, or stand with Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and the Tea Party, who want to put politics and ideology above our Constitution responsibility. Just hours after Justice Scalia passed away, Republican leaders started down the wrong path. I'm hopeful that they reconsider and come back and do the right thing. As my colleagues here have noted, the Constitution could not be clearer when it comes to what should happen when there is a Supreme Court vacancy. The President shall nominate and shall appoint with the advice and consent of the Senate, not shall nominate in his first 3 years, not shall nominate unless the Senate leadership wants to keep the seat open for a while. The President shall nominate. That is his responsibility. And then it is our responsibility in the Senate to consider, advise, and ultimately help make sure that vacancy is filled with a qualified person. But Republican leaders don't seem to be interested in constitutional responsibility. They seem to be interested in partisan politics. They aren't objecting to a person. They are objecting to the very idea of this president, President Obama, being allowed to do his job. Just today, they reiterated that they won't even allow a hearing, no matter how qualified a nominee is. That is not advice and consent. That is politicize and obstruct. Working with the President to evaluate and confirm Supreme Court justices is one of the most important responsibilities we have here in the Senate. So again, I hope the Republican leaders step back from this dangerous partisan path. We are asking them to do one thing: do your job.
Senator Reid, you said back in Nevada that
I knew you've been off the hill for too long.
he was in the pole position before and then he moved. You said back in Nevada that Senator McConnell would cave. I think those were your words. Do you still believe that's the case? He seems to have dug in here and decided he's not.
He hasn't seen the pressure that's going to build. It's going to build in all facets of the political constituency in the country.
Leader Reid, is part of that pressure on the appropriations process? Do you plan to use the appropriations process to force this?
I'm not going to turn into the obstruct caucus. We're going to do our work. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to proceed. Someone asked me also in Nevada, they said, are you going to shut down the Senate? So then nothing to shut down. We're not doing anything anyway.
Senator Reid, I know you disagree with the way the Republicans have been talking about.
I liked you better before.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very kind. I know you disagree with the way the Republicans are characterizing Joe Biden's comments, but you understand politics just as well as anyone here. How much does the unearthing of that video undercut your message here?
Not at all.
Remember, Senator Schumer laid out very clearly, we have not held up any nomination. This was in June. There was nobody even being considered at the time. So that's they're rushing for something that is not going to help them at all. We have time and time again. Let's go back to 1988, the last year of the Reagan administration. What did we do? We had a hearing on Kennedy, and he was approved unanimously. So this is something that's untoward. Of course, people make statements about a lot of things, but what Joe Biden did, now understand Joe's made a few statements over the years about a lot of things, but in this one instance, it really didn't mean a thing because nothing was pending.
He made a mistake in saying that?
No, he didn't make. He has a right to speak. It didn't make any difference.
McConnell make
There
a
was
mistake
there was nothing pending.
Did McConnell make a mistake saying all the times he said it the other way? Did Grassley make a mistake when they said it? The public doesn't care about that. They care about us doing our job, plain and simple. All this back and forth of quotes from years ago, which didn't hold anything up, don't make a darn bit of difference to the public.
Senator Reid, how much of a vulnerability do you think this is to Republicans in blue and purple states?
The Republicans themselves are saying, through their right-wing outlets, that they would rather the Republicans lose the Senate than allow a vote on the nominee. So that says it all. Let's look at it this way. Doing something never done in the history of this country, is not going to help them. Let's put it that way.
Leader Reid, if Republicans refuse to consider this nominee all year long, and a Republican does win the White House, how does it change the standards for consideration of future Supreme Court nominees if there's a Republican in the White House?
It's not a question of changing how we approve Supreme Court nominees. It approves how we approach any nomination. What they're doing is changing the Senate. They're changing it. Our founding fathers were very clear. I outlined on the Senate floor yesterday things that George Washington said, Madison said, the founding fathers of this country. To have a country that functions, you have to have a Senate that works with collegiality and fairness, and that's why we've been able all these years until they showed up in town to have the filibuster broken with cloture. That's not in the Constitution. It's just something we developed to work around here, and they've even ruined that.
Senator Reid, when do you expect the nominee to come down? Would you urge the White House to move more quickly on this?
Well, the White House is going to do it as quickly as they feel appropriate. You've all seen the binder the president's carrying. He's taking this responsibility himself. He wants to do the right thing, and we're going to get a nomination soon.
Senator Reid, would the Republicans
Uh-huh.
Why do you think that Republicans seem to harden their position on this?
Why, the question is, why are the Republicans harden their position on this? They've hardened their position on this because they've been given directions by the Koch-driven right wing. There's a lot of money that is driven their way. They feel this is a way that is going to help them. They believe that it's more important that they stop a person from going on the Supreme Court than they're having their own job as a senator. It's something that right wing is driving these people. When I talk about the Trump Cruz wing of the Republican Party, that they're following that, I'm not just making that up. That's what they're doing. Donald Trump, what he said a couple of days ago, Supreme Court nomination, these are his words. Delay, delay, delay. Last question. Yes. I'm sorry, did you?
The chances then that they would change their minds now?
Well, the chance, I think they do not understand how wrong they are, how they're on the wrong side of the road on this, and they're headed in the wrong direction. They're going to have head-on crash. It's going to be very, very, I think, bad for them. Last question.
what the Republicans keep saying from McConnell on down is that if the two were on the other foot, the Democrats controlled the Senate and there was a Republican president, that you would be blocking.
We haven't done it. We haven't done it before. That's all. That's made up. We have not done.
That if the shoe was on the other foot, that you absolutely would have gone through the process and
I felt, for example, that the nomination of Clarence Thomas was bad for the country. I'm right. I voted against him. He got 52 votes. Anyone could have held that up. But we didn't do that. You know, we weren't elated with Alito, especially after Roberts. But we didn't filibuster anything. So that is all phony. We have never done that. If we did it, it wouldn't be good for the country. And what they're doing is not only bad for the country, it's bad for the political parties generally, especially the Republicans, because this is a clear indication that they're headed in the direction the party of Lincoln is becoming the party of Donald Trump.